All right, so normally we would kind of do a quick recap of the weekend before we dive in, but there is bigger news today to start things off. News out of Mississippi State. Scott Foxhall, the pitching coach at Mississippi State for the last 4 years under Chris Lemonis, has been relieved of his duties. He is no longer the pitching coach. Hey, Dad, what update do you have for us?
That's really all you have right this second. Mississippi State has made the decision to go ahead and relieve Scott Foxhall of his duties effective immediately. A decision that was clear and obvious going to happen by season's end. But the way this pitching staff performed this past weekend and the weekend before that, to be honest with you, and this whole season. I mean, we talked a little bit about it, I guess, on our call this morning, but State's in-conference ERA is 9.82. Now, if you're not a huge baseball, I mean, you don't have to be an analytics fan to know what ERA is. But that means State gives up, on average, in conference play, 10 runs a game. They've given up,
and that's earned runs. That's not total
runs. That's not
the
counting,
total number of runs is actually a little higher because of some
as you know, because State's defense
is
dead last in the conference as well. So this was a decision that was clearly going to happen. I will admit to being surprised it happened today. I thought it would just be one of those things where they would just ride out the season, but apparently it had reached the point that Chris Lemonis felt he had to go ahead and just rip that Band-Aid off and see what happens. Hopefully, for Lemonis' sake, State will show some improvement so that he can point to that and say, we're going to fix this problem. We're Mississippi State. We can go out and get an outstanding pitching coach to come pitch here with all our talent, with all our support, with all our money, and that'll be the case. But Lemonis, I see Foxhall as an anchor, and he could have. I think by casting him off now, Lemonis may not have sunk his ship. He may be able to come back for another season. I think if he had I think it was going to get bad enough, and it may still get bad enough. There's no guarantees, but leaving Foxhall in for the rest of the year and letting this team just get lit up next weekend by Arkansas and the weekend after that by LSU, you had to try something. You had to do something. I don't know who they're going to bring in the interim. Haven't heard that yet. My first thought, as I mentioned today, it'll be on tomorrow's Thunder and Lightning podcast, which I have a funny story about. My first thought is, do you just call Jay Powell and say, come in for a month, come in for 3 weeks, help us out, get through the season? Call any number of former MSU former pitchers and just be like, we just need somebody here to guide us for 3 weeks. I don't know the answer to that question. But then I believe this decision now allows State to get the jump on a lot of other schools who will want to hire a pitching coach, and we'll see where they go. My guess is one of the calls will be in this very state. They'll talk to USM. They'll want to talk to Christian Ostrander. And then beyond that, I don't really know.
I completely get that this had to happen, right? I mean, when you look at the numbers for the pitching staff, a change had to happen. I understand that. But I also would ask about the entire body of work and say, is this a function of all of a sudden Scott Foxhall doesn't know how to coach pitchers and doesn't know how to get his guys ready? Or is it simply a function of available arms? And the reason I ask that is you think back to the 2021 national championship season where Mississippi State rode Will Bednar and Christian McLeod and Landon Sims out of the bullpen and Cade Smith as a freshman and a bunch of other guys that were impact pitchers, Houston Harding and Preston Johnson and Brandon Smith and KC Hunt, I guess, as a freshman at that point. So many guys, Stone Simmons, that contributed, Jackson Fristow. The list goes on and on and on. He had a lot of tools at his disposal that year. Does any of that matter?
No. I guess not.
But I mean, you understand you understand the question that I'm asking. Clearly, when he had a deep and healthy pitching staff, he, along with Chris Lemonis, were pushing all the right buttons and pulling all the right strings.
I think when you look at the way State's recruited pitching the past few years, they have missed on so many guys. And these are guys, in high school they could throw because they got offers from Mississippi State and along with other SEC schools.
Mm-hmm.
But they get to Mississippi State and they just lose the ability to throw strikes. I mean, State has so many guys, has 2 or 3 guys that they're pitching on SEC weekends that have no business pitching in SEC baseball. Just no business. They can't be competitive at this level.
So I guess the larger question is Scott Foxhall simply a scapegoat, or was this the right decision?
I believe this was the right decision. I'm still not totally sold that Chris Lemonis should be back, because I want to see how this season finishes out. They if they get swept out again, I don't know that you want to bring anybody back. But now, at least now you have the opportunity to see if you can bring in somebody. And that's the thing. Like, I don't know how much you can change in 3 weeks, right? They've been practicing since fall on the Scott Foxhall approach. What can you change in 3 weeks? I don't know the answer.
It's the
to
same
that.
guys. I mean,
yeah,
you don't have a roster change.
Not like
you have a pitching coach change. We'll talk the biggest story of the day that fell into our laps about 1 o'clock or so this afternoon. And that is the news out of Starkville. Mississippi State, Chris Lemonis, Scott Foxhall has been fired as the pitching coach. He is not being retained for the remainder of the season. This honestly is rare in college baseball. You see coaching staff changes all the time, but baseball is one of those things where it happens at the end of the year. Now in football, it's becoming more and more common to see a head coach let go before the season comes to an end, and some of that is calendar related. We've seen it a number of times in basketball where guys step down before the end of the season. In fact, we've seen that twice at Ole Miss with each of the last 2 head coaches, right? Andy Kennedy stepped down before the season came to an end. Kermit Davis was fired before the season came to an end. But this is a little more rare in baseball. In fact, can you guys think of an example off the top of your head where you've seen in college baseball a mid-season assistant termination?
Not recently, no.
No, nothing high profile.
It's because, you fire your defensive coordinator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a linebacker coach can take that over. Your safeties coach can take that over. You fire a head coach in basketball, or one of the assistants can just jump up and become the interim. But in baseball, one guy is the pitching coach. The other guy is the hitting coach, and the other guy is the head coach. And then you have a fourth guy who sort of does whatever it does. At State, Cheeseborough works with the catchers. You don't have another guy. You're asking, it would be literally like asking Zach Arnett, okay, you got to call plays now. So you have to go from outside. I mean, obviously you can't pluck a pitching coach from another school right now. Everybody's going to want to finish out their season. Nobody's going to walk away from a team right now. So you have to sort of do what I was talking about. Do you find a former player or somebody who's retired right now, who isn't coaching anymore, to take that job? So it's a more difficult,
all right,
hiring process at this point in time.
Sure. And you're not making a hire before the season. I mean, unless
these next 3 weeks don't matter. They don't matter. The question is this a job? Is this something that? I mean, can you ever make a hire without the blessing of your athletic director? But was this something where Lemonis and Selman sat down, and Selman gave him the go-ahead? You're going to return. Changes need to be made. And then Lemonis went ahead and made those changes because the next 3 weeks don't matter. I am so disinterested in who is the pitching coach for the next 3 weeks. It's who's the coach next year. If it is Chris Lemonis, did he do this today with the blessing of his athletic director? Why today? Why now? And is Zach Selman saying, you're back next year, but changes have to be made? Like, that's what I'm curious about. Why today and why now?
We have zero sample size to have any idea what's going on in Zach Selman's head. Right? We have – there is no track record. There's not a track record at Mississippi State. There's not a track record anywhere else. It's his first time as an athletics director. And so we don't know what this means, or at least I don't think we know. Hey, Dad, you may have a little bit better feeling on it than I do on what this means from Zach Selman's standpoint. Borky, I get your point in, like, it doesn't matter this year. Not really worried about who the pitching coach is for the final 3 weeks of the regular season and whatever's left of the year. It's about what it means going forward. But I am, like, from a pure logistics standpoint, hey, Dad, if they don't go out and pull somebody in to just come in and call pitches and work with the pitchers over the final 3 weeks of the regular season, what are the mechanics? Who's calling pitches?
Yeah, I thought about that because the only way you could do that, if you don't hire somebody, bring somebody in, I don't think you could let Ross Highfield catch again this year.
No. Well,
you'd have to let Luke Hancock do it as a fifth-year senior who I would trust him to call the game. I don't know. I mean, Highfield, I'm sure he's called games. I don't know that he's ever called a game. I don't know that he's ever been in that situation. Yeah. Hancock, at the very least, would have to be, I think, the guy you'd put behind the plate the rest of the year. And you don't want that because you want Highfield to get at bats. He needs them to continue his development.
I mean, I was thinking a second ago, it's like if you had Logan Tanner, you wouldn't worry about it. You're like, okay, he's calling the game.
Yeah.
It's fine. You know, we're going to work with him on what the plan is going in. But
right. If Hancock was just the catcher, if there was it was his position and he wasn't platooning there, I would have no problem just saying, all right, Luke, you call the game. But if you're going to put the true freshman behind the plate, that's a different story, I think. Especially when you're talking about so many young pitchers, too. Guys, still in their first year.
Was Chris Lemonis a pitching coach at any of his previous stops?
No. He's not, no.
Okay.
I mean, he can call a game, though.
Sure he can.
Yeah, it's the same thing like with Arnett, who likes to joke I don't know. If Zach Arnett had to call plays, he'd figure it out. Chris Lemonis is an experienced baseball coach. He could figure it out, but I'm sure he'd rather find somebody to take it for the next 3 weeks. And there, like I said, I think there will be people available to help. That's what this is. It's just you're going to come in and you're going to help for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll pay you some money, but
Sure. Do you think that this decision means that Chris Lemonis is safe? And I feel like I need to ask another question or make a statement before you answer that. I wonder if this was about placating fans a little bit. Like the outcry from a passionate Mississippi State baseball fan base had gotten to the point where Zach Selman said to Chris Lemonis or Chris Lemonis said to Zach Selman or some combination, hey, we got to get through the end of the year. We're obviously going to talk when the season is done, but we got to do something to try to settle this down and turn the attention back to the team for the final 3 weeks.
Very possible. I mean, I don't think the idea is Lemonis sitting there saying, man, the fans are just on my butt. I got to do something. I don't think that, I got to throw them a bone. I don't think that's where you go. But this move certainly placates fans at the same time because they've been calling for Foxhall's head for months. Months. I mean, there was never any question that the final game of the Texas A&M series, or if State were to somehow make it to Hoover whenever they got eliminated, was going to be the last day for Scott Foxhall as Mississippi State's pitching coach. There was never any question about that in my mind. Basically, going back to the tournament in Frisco. Now you, like I said, you can get a little bit of a head start on that. Start, and you're able to talk to your recruits, talk to your players who might be considering hitting the portal and saying, "All right, this is what we're going to do." I don't think it was done, with the fans in mind. And as far as your first question about, basically you're asking, is Lemonis safe? I mean, State's lost now 4 in a row in the SEC. They play Arkansas this week, who's coming off of a sweep with Texas A&M, one of the best teams in the country. State, when they've been good, has had problems with Arkansas. The national championship was swept at home. The national championship team was swept at home by Arkansas. So, I mean, what am I expecting there? And then you have LSU, the best hitting team in the country, the week after that. I mean, that legitimately, I'm not exaggerating when I say State could be run ruled in all 3 games there. It's very possible. And then you have an A&M team coming in at the end who's going to be fighting for tournament position. They're going to be trying to get in. If State gets swept the last 3 weekends, and they've lost 13 straight to finish the year, and they finish last in the SEC for the 2nd straight season, you don't have to twist my arm very hard to get to Chris Lemonis has to go to. A lot of ifs. That's the worst case scenario. But in reality, when you look at these last 3 weeks, does anybody see more than 3 wins? And see State get maybe a win in each series? I don't see them getting a win with LSU, to be honest. And if they finish 8-22, what are you doing?
Well, and